All right, let's start off here with number 2. So we always want to kind of set up our vertex form first. And so we don't know what this a value is, so we always leave that as a variable. And then I switch the x value of the vertex and then keep the y value the same. So I put that like that. All right, so next up, we're going to plug in this other point as an x comma y to find our a value. All right, so now I need to solve for a. I'm going to do PEMDAS here in the parentheses, so this is going to be negative 3 squared. And so the negative 3 squared is positive 9a plus 18 equals negative 9. So then I'm going to subtract 18 from both sides. And so I get 9a equals negative 27. Then I'll divide both sides by 9. And a equals negative 3. So now that we have that, we're going to plug that back into this kind of original form of the equation. So I'm going to say y equals negative 3 times x minus 2 squared plus 18. So you can see that I'm just rewriting this except with my newly found a. And so what this means is that I need to write this x minus 2 twice, and I'm going to have to multiply those together. So I always multiply these with a box, so we're going to do x minus 2 times x minus 2. So that'll be x squared minus 2x, and then positive 4. So that turns into y equals negative 3 times. And then I'm going to fill out the contents of my box here, so I got x squared. The negative 2x and the negative 2x here combine to make negative 4x, and then I have plus 4. And I still got this plus 18 outside the parentheses. So now I'm going to distribute the negative 3 in there. So I get negative 3x squared plus 12x minus 12 plus 18. And so now I'm going to combine like terms. So I get negative 3x squared plus 12x and then plus 6. All right, next up here, we want to factor these, so I'm going to factor this one by grouping. So the first group, it looks like I can take out 4x squared, and that leaves me with 4x minus 3. The second group, it looks like I can't take out anything, so I'm going to take out a negative 1, and that'll turn this into 4x minus 3 as well. So then I can make one parentheses for the stuff outside, and then one parentheses for the stuff inside. And then I noticed that this one is actually the difference of perfect squares. So I can split that up again. This happens sometimes, so I can do this as taking the square root of each, so 2x and 1, 2x and 1, with 1 plus and 1 minus, and then I'll just bring this 4x minus 3 down without changing it. All right, next up here, number 6, I'm going to factor this one as well. I don't see a GCF, and so I'm going to use the x here. So we got to put a times c on top, and that's negative 30, and then b on bottom is 7. And so I got to think of two numbers and multiply to negative 30 and add to 7, so that would be 10 and 3 if I make the 3 negative. So then what I can do is I need to use the grouping here since I have 6n squared here. And then these two guys are going to be how I split up my 7n, so that's going to be plus 10n minus 3n. And you could change that order if you want, it really doesn't matter. And then I'm going to put the minus 5 out there. So now I'm going to group these up, and then the first group I can take out 2n, which leaves me with 3n plus 5, and then the second group I'm going to take out a negative 1, which would also leave me with 3n plus 5. And so then I get 2n minus 1 times 3n plus 5, and that's it. I am done. All right, next up here, we need to state the max or min value. Now, I already know part A, I already know it has a min because I know that because A is positive, and whenever A is positive, the parabola looks like this. So I know the vertex is actually the lowest point on the graph. To find the min, I need to find the vertex. So I'm going to find the x value of the vertex first, which is negative b over 2a. And so in this case, that'll be negative 6 over 2 times 3. So that's negative 6 over 6, so that's negative 1. I still need to plug that in, though, to find the y value of the vertex because that's really the max or the min. So I'll go ahead and do that. So I need to do PEMDAS here, so I got to do the exponent first, so that's a positive 1. Then I got to do my multiplication, so this will be 3 minus 6 plus 2. And lastly, I'll do my addition and subtraction. So 3 minus 6 is negative 3, plus 2 is negative 1. And so that's my answer for part B, the y value, negative 1. For domain and range, remember that domain on all of these is all real numbers. And the range is really based on the vertex here. So I know my vertex is -1, -1, and then you can see that my y values go up from there. So I'm going to say y is greater than or equal to -1. All right, next up here, number 10. So I want to start off solving these by factoring. I want to get one side to 0, so you can see I've already done that. So now I'm just going to factor it. So I'm going to think of two numbers that multiply to -88 and add to -3. So it's going to be 11 and 8 if I make the 11 negative. So x minus 11, x plus 8 equals 0. So whenever I'm factored equal to 0, I can split these up and set them equal to 0 individually. So there you go. And so I'm going to add this 11. So x equals 11. And then this one would be x equals -8. So I get two answers there. All right, these next two, it looks like I don't have one side to 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add or subtract everything to one side. So I'm going to add 24v and then add 144 to both sides. That'll cross these out, which gives me 0 on the right side. And then on the left side, I don't have any like terms, so I'm just going to list them all out here. So I got the v squared, 24v. Oops, I forgot 24v, and then plus 144. So now I'm going to factor this, thinking of two numbers that multiply to 144 and add to 24. So that's going to be 12 and 12. So I'm going to say v plus 12 equals 0. And so now I can split this up. And however, in this case, it's actually the same thing. So I'm actually just going to combine these and do it once. So v plus 12 equals 0. I'm going to subtract the 12, and so I get v equals -12. All right, next up here, we want to get one side to 0 first, so I'm going to add the 52k over. And so I have 5k squared plus 52k plus 20 equals 0. And now we're going to factor this. There's no GCF here, so I'm just going to factor it. We'll do a times c up top, which is 100. And then on bottom we have 52, which is b. So that looks like 50 and 2. That one's not too bad. However, I do need to use the grouping here. So I'm going to split this up to 50k and 2k. And then we'll put that guy over there, and then this guy over there. And we'll do our grouping. So I'm going to take 5k out and give me k plus 10. I'm going to take 2 out and leave me with k plus 10 as well. So we get 5k plus 2 times k plus 10 equal to 0. And so now I can split this up and set them equal to 0 individually. Now this one's pretty easy. I'm just going to subtract 10 from each side, so k equals -10. And then subtract 2 from each side, so 5k equals -2. Divide by 5, and k equals -2 over 5. All right, next up here, number 16. So this one I do see we have a GCF. In this case, it is 3. So I'm going to take that out front, and that'll leave me with 2b squared plus b minus 6 equal to 0. So then I need to do some factoring here on the inside. I'll do the x with a times c up top, which will be -12. And then on bottom, I'll put b, which is 1. So it's going to be 4 and 3 if I make the 3 negative. However, I do need to use my grouping here because I got that 2b squared. And so this splits up into these guys. So it'll be plus 4b minus 3b. And then the minus 6 out there. So then we'll do our grouping. So I can take out 2b, leaves me with b plus 2. And I can take out a -3, which leaves me with b plus 2. So 2b minus 3, and then b plus 2. And then I still technically need this 3 out front, and we're going to set that equal to 0. Now I'm going to split these up and set them equal to 0 individually. I don't set the 3 equal to 0 because there's no variable. So whenever there's no variable, don't equal it to 0, only the stuff that has the variable. So I'm going to solve these now. I'm going to add the 3 on this one. So 2b equals 3, divide by 2, and b equals 3 over 2. So that's one of our answers. On this one, a little bit easier, b just equals -2. All right, lastly, we're just going to graph these functions here. This is actually in vertex form. So it's really easy to see the vertex here. We just switch the value inside the parentheses. That'll be 2, and then keep this value the same. That'll be -4. So our vertex is here at 2, -4. We also have our axis of symmetry going down the middle of that. And then now we got to find our y-intercept by plugging in 0 for x. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right, and now I'll just do some PEMDAS here. So in the parentheses, it can be -2. And then exponents would turn that into a +4. And then multiplication is going to turn that into a -8. And -8 minus 4 is -12. So I have my y-intercept right there, and then a matching point on the other side of the axis of symmetry, and we can just draw our parabola.